Hi, I'm Andy Jones, content editor for Plaid's online education program, Let's Paint. Today, we're going to learn how to use the flat brush. Let's get started. Today's skill builder is going to be all about using the flat brush. It's probably the most common brush that artists use. A flat brush has a flat surface to it, and the most important feature is its chisel edge, which is the very end of the brush. You always want to use a brush that has a good, sharp chisel edge. It will make your painting much, much easier for you. I'm going to be using Folk Art acrylics in Naphthol Crimson today. Folk Art paint is very creamy and thick in consistency, and that's great for a lot of painting techniques. But for brushstroke work, we need the paint to be a little bit thinner. So I'm going to add some water to my red paint and mix it up thoroughly with a palette knife. You basically want your paint to be the consistency of bird poop. It'll be very easy for you to remember that, but you want your paint to have body to it, but also to be able to flow off the brush. So to test it, scoop it up on your palette knife, and if it plops off, it's just about right for brushstroke work. Get in the habit of wiping your palette knife off on a paper towel before you lay it down. Make sure to get the edges clean, and then you can lay it down. If you get in that habit, you'll never pick up a dirty palette knife and put it into paint that you don't want. All right, so we need to load our brush with paint. So don't jump into the middle of your puddle of paint. Always start by pressing the flat surface of the brush on the palette and ease into the paint. This patting motion of the brush up and down spreads the bristles out, and when they snap back together, it pulls the paint up into the brush. This will ensure that your brush is full of paint and ready to make a brush stroke. You'll probably spend more time loading your brush on the palette than you will actually making brush strokes. The first stroke we're going to make is a line stroke. So I can show you what a line stroke looks like. It's a long line made with the flat brush, and it's made by holding the handle of the brush up toward the ceiling, touching the brush to the surface, applying no pressure, and just letting the brush move along. If your paint's the right consistency, you can paint quite a long line that way. Again, load your brush with paint, pressing on the palette. Always check to make sure that you don't have any excess paint on your brush. Aim the handle straight toward the ceiling, apply no pressure, and let the bristles just touch the surface and drag the brush along. It's pretty simple. As soon as you learn not to press too hard, you'll be making lots of beautiful lines. The next stroke, simply a basic flat stroke. I'm going to touch the brush down, and I'm not going to apply pressure, and I'm just going to pull. The stroke is the width of my brush. I want to show you another way to make a flat stroke. If I want something wider, I can touch the brush to the surface. I can apply pressure and pull. Same brush, two separate flat brush strokes. So you can see on this example, we have the line stroke that we've done, and we have the flat stroke. So we've used the two different surfaces of our flat brush. We've used the flat surface and the chisel edge. Next, I'm going to show you how to do comma strokes with the flat brush to the right and to the left. So we're going to load the brush again, making sure that it's full of paint. You're going to set your brush onto the surface at an angle, generally a 45-degree angle to the corner of your paper. I'm going to touch the brush to the surface. I'm going to apply pressure. I'm going to lift, and I'm going to drag the brush to a point. You'll notice that I said I touched, I pressed, I lifted, and I dragged. I did not turn the brush. The brush doesn't move in my hands. Pay careful attention to that as I do another comma stroke for you. It's all about dragging the brush and the pressure of the brush. I do not twist or turn the brush in my hand. Again, touch the brush to the surface, apply pressure, lift, and drag to a point. Don't twist, don't turn the brush. You may not ever use these exact strokes in a painting, but what this does is it trains your hand to know how to manipulate the brush from a wide stroke to a narrow stroke. And when you are in control of your brush, you can paint anything you want to. Let's make comma strokes go in the other direction. So I'm going to angle my brush the opposite way, and I'm going to do the same motion. Touch the brush to the surface, press, pull, lift, and drag to a point. Don't turn the brush and don't twist the brush. Touch the brush to the surface, press, lift, and drag. Don't be afraid if you mess up while you're practicing and learning. That's perfectly normal. It takes a while to become comfortable with the motion of the brush. It's a nice, gentle angle. Many of you will go to make a brush stroke and you'll touch the brush, you'll pull, and then you're like, oh, I have to lift, and then drag, and you'll create a brush stroke that looks like that. Don't worry about it. The next time, just remember, touch, press, lift, and drag in one continuous motion so that you get a nicely shaped stroke. All right, let's make some U strokes utilizing the thin and thick aspects. We're going to start by standing our brush on the chisel edge, apply pressure, and then lift and drag back to a point. It's the same motion that we had using the comma stroke, but this time we're going to make a stroke that looks like a U shape. So, aim the brush handle up toward the ceiling, touch the brush to the surface, pull, press, lift, and drag it back to a point. Again, no twisting, no turning of the brush. Touch the brush to the surface, slide, press, lift, and drag back to a point. And it may look very easy when I'm doing this, but keep in mind that I've been doing this most of my life, and this is the way I started, learning to control the flat brush so that it does what I want it to do. That's not such a graceful stroke, but I'm not going to worry about it. Just going to try to make a better one this time. Touch the brush to the surface, press, lift, and drag it to a point. You can also do these strokes from side to side, just as though you were filling in the center of a flower. It's the same stroke, just performed a different direction. Touch the brush to the surface, slide, press, lift, back up to a point. The other direction, touch the brush to the surface, slide, press, lift, and back up to a point. Next stroke that we're going to do is a half circle stroke or a pivot stroke. This is the one time that you get to turn the brush in your hand. So I hold the brush like a pencil with my hands just back from the ferrule. But to do the half circle stroke, I'm going to hold the brush between my fingers so that I can pivot the brush around. So I'm going to set the brush down, going to apply pressure, keep one part anchored, and pivot the brush around. Let's do that again for you. Touch the brush to the surface, keeping one anchor point, and pivot the brush around. Can do it the other direction. Touch the brush to the surface, keeping one point anchored, and pivot around. Again, I'm making this look easier than it actually is, so don't beat yourself up. Just practice, and what you want to be able to do is to create a nice, smooth outside edge. Not so worried about the inside, but if I were painting a piece of fruit and I wanted to fill in the outside edge, I might need to be able to pivot like that. So there is a method to this madness, but learning to make the brush do what you want it to do is very important. The last stroke that I'm going to teach you with the flat brush is the S stroke. It's a beautiful, graceful stroke when done properly. We're going to begin on the chisel edge, we're going to slide, apply pressure, and then we're going to lift back up on the chisel edge. Should be a very nice, graceful S stroke, not a Z stroke. So we're going to start on the chisel edge, slide, apply pressure, and lift back up on the chisel edge. Do that again for you. Stand the brush up, slide, apply pressure, and lift back up. We can do it the opposite direction. Slide, apply pressure, lift back up on the chisel edge. Now, I've been painting a lot of brush strokes and I've just keep adding paint to my brush, but I feel like it's getting to be a little bit thick on my brush. But I'm going to lay the brush down, I'm going to fold the paper towel over it and gently pull the brush through. That serves two purposes. I'm getting rid of the excess paint on the brush and I'm also grooming the brush back into shape. So I'm going to touch my brush to water, I'm going to blot it gently on my paper towel and then load the brush with paint again and we'll be good to go. So I'm going to do a little bit longer S-stroke this time and I'm going to hook a couple of them together for you. So we're going to start up on the chisel edge. We're going to slide, press, lift and slide, press, lift and slide, press, lift and slide. And you can create beautiful ribbons that way. It's the same brush stroke, just requires a little effort and a little practice on your part to be able to do that. Again, the S stroke. Stand the brush on the chisel edge, slide, press, lift and slide. Be done the opposite direction. Touch the brush down, slide, press, lift and slide back on the chisel edge. Don't do this. Don't slide, press, lift, slide, press, lift, slide, press, lift. That's not as attractive as having the nice flow of the S shape. So again, to review the strokes that we made, we did a straight stroke with the brush. We used our chisel edge, held the brush up toward the ceiling and just pulled, applying no pressure. Using the flat surface of the brush, touch and pull, we made comma strokes. Touch, press, lift, and drag. Do it in the opposite direction, the same motion of touch, press, lift, and drag. U strokes up on the chisel edge, slide, apply pressure, and lift back up on the chisel edge. Then we had the fun pivot stroke where we rolled the brush in our fingers in either direction. And then we did the graceful S stroke, slide, press, lift, and slide. You can do all of these brush strokes. Just give yourself some time as you practice. Don't beat yourself up. Some days you'll paint beautiful strokes, other days, not so much. But that's okay. As long as you're learning and improving, that's what's important. To become really good at brushstroke work, you're going to have to practice some. We've made it easy for you by creating free downloadable practice guides. Simply visit the link below.